Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Arledge. Welcome to this week's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojan Huddle, where we tell it like it is and try to have some fun doing it. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a panel discussion posted each Tuesday. We feature WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. I'm not sure which of us is the historian. Maybe we don't feature historians very much, but we feature the three of us. Hope you like it. Let's start off with our pregame show where we introduce our panel members. First, a WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways. In addition to doing regular season football and basketball reports, he hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked on USC. He is the real reason Lane Kiffin had to cover up his face in that Sun Bowl game. He is Mark Holken. The editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, a columnist, national recruiting guru, producer, moderator of in-season video shows 4 Downs and 5 Things, a graduate of USC, a former member of Menudo, and the man who engineered USC's move to the Big Ten, he is Eric McKinney. Your substitute host, and by the way, because I know you're curious, Greg Katz is doing well. We do expect him to come back at some point soon, but I know he appreciates everybody's well wishes. In the meantime, I am your substitute host. I played defensive back at William Jewell College. I'm a WeAreSC columnist, graduate of the USC Law School. I once faxed a letter to Heritage Hall to complain about the hiring of Pete Carroll, but that's a true story. But I've been right about USC football every day since. I'm Chris Arledge. If you enjoy WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojan Huddle, thank you for that. And please click on the like and the red subscriber buttons. It's helpful to us. It costs you next to nothing. Do it for us. Do it for our children. Do it for America. Go ahead and click that right now. And we still have the first-time subscribers 1 month of WeAreSC premium content deal, Eric. Is that right?
Yep.
I mean, I'd hate to say it if we don't. It's only $1. You get a month for $1. I mean, that's amazing.
You can say whatever you want, and we'll just hold you to doing that for people.
That sounds fine. Okay, it's free for all of you. Just go ahead and come on board, and then we'll see if they can get a check out of me. Look, we have a lot of stuff going on the website. Please do join. Good articles, good information, recruiting information. We have spring practice coming up. A month for $1 is a great deal. Do it. All right. Guys, we're ready for the first quarter.
Put me in, coach.
All right, let's lead off with the big news this week. As everybody knows, running backs coach Kyle McDonald left for the NFL, and by the time this program has aired, USC should have introduced Anthony Jones of TCU as a new running backs coach. All right, fellas, how do you feel about the hire? Is this what USC should have been looking for in a running back coach? What are we getting with this guy? Mark, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, no, what's not to like about it? I mean, you look at his resume, and Scott and Eric have been all over this from the very beginning. It's finally nice to have one of the local guys kind of break the story rather than the national. So, again, you look at his resume, Anthony Jones Jr., TCU. There's a little bit of crossover connection. Lincoln Riley's brother, Garrett, was the offensive coordinator at TCU, so I'm sure he gave a little wink, wink. Hey, check out my guy over here. He might be able to help you out now. But again, you look at what he's been able to produce, and he's developing running backs, and they're getting to the NFL. And really, what do you want your running back coach to do above and beyond that? You want him to be able to recruit. You want him to be able to develop, and you want to be able to get guys to the NFL. So, yeah, you look at what he brings to the table. A lot of accolades. There's not a lot to not like. In fact, I've been looking for something, and I don't know. Rarely you're going to find a negative out there, and I haven't stumbled upon anything.
Mark Holken out there trying to dig up dirt.
Well, not dirt, but just looking for trying to keep the scales balanced. That's how I like to look at things. So right now, everything weighs in USC's advantage. And this is what I'm going to ask. Kyle McDonald and Anthony Jones Jr. went head-to-head in a recruiting battle. Nate Palmer was the recruit that USC and TCU wanted. TCU won that battle. Does this young running back who want to follow the running back coach that he wanted to play for, does he follow him back to LA now? Just kind of throwing that out there.
Good question. Maybe we'll get Nate Palmer on the show next week and ask him. In the meantime, we're going to ask Eric McKinney. McKinney, what do you think?
So just for the recruiting thing that Mark said, I think we should talk about that in real terms, right? So it's Anthony Jones sponsored by the Flying T Club, TCU's collective, versus Kyle McDonald sponsored by, right? Like that's like the branding that goes into recruiting now. It's not coach versus coach. It's whatever the collective can bring also too. So no, for him, what's interesting is that this is the first hire that Lincoln Riley has really had to make on the offensive side since getting to USC. Once he put that staff together, it's unheard of to keep staffs together unless you're at Iowa and those guys don't want to go anywhere ever in after any season. To keep kind of continuity like that. Now, there was that kind of grenade that exploded on defense, and you had to do the entire thing there. It didn't sound like USC was totally expecting to lose anyone from the offense. So this was the first time that he had to, I don't want to say scramble, but put together a plan to go get a guy. And I don't think that he is somebody, Anthony Jones Jr. was somebody that all the USC fans were sitting there saying, oh, you got to go get this guy. You got to go get this guy. But it's also one of those names where once it starts to pop up, you see these different places that have connections to coaches and all of that, where inside the coaching fraternity community, this is a guy. This is a guy who has risen quickly and done really well. And I think what's interesting, again, going back to what Lincoln Riley did defensively, what he said over and over and over and over was player development. These guys can develop players. You can put them with any roster and they will turn those guys into good football players. If you look at what Anthony Jones Jr. has done, both at Memphis and at TCU, two programs that outside of D'Angelo Williams from Memphis do not pump guys into the NFL historically from that running back spot. He's got a chance for 6 NFL draft picks in 6 years from those two stops, plus a guy who signed as a free agent and landed on a 53-man roster. That is unbelievable development. These were not 4-star guys, 5-star guys coming out of high school to those programs. So again, that falls in line with what Lincoln Riley was looking for and what he wanted. I think he's a guy that, he's from Memphis, but was coaching at in Texas. USC's got a ton of Texas running backs and has recruited that state well. So he absolutely knows these guys on the roster. He knows what he's getting into with them, obviously likes what he has there enough. He's handled some recruiting coordinator stuff before. And so, yeah, I think you'll like a lot of what this does. Again, it's not a flashy name where all the recruiting guys go, oh, this is a big time hire because he recruits all these guys. This is a guy that coaches really respect and admire what he's been able to do as far as being a coach, developing players and sending them to the next level.
I should add, Chris, before you step in, that a lot of the coaches in Texas, in the state, they were surprised that he's making this move. I mean, they thought, oh, wow, this guy's going to make a move, but he's probably going to be to an offensive coordinator position. So for him to leave TCU to come to USC in the same position, it caught a lot of people by surprise. You're going to see a domino effect now with running back coaches kind of moving around for these next few days.
Yeah, well, Lincoln Riley has done a lot of hiring of guys this offseason that may have been candidates for higher positions. And so if that's the case with Jones, it's just one more example. As Eric pointed out, this is a guy who recruits Texas. And Lincoln Riley loves himself a Texas running back, right? I mean, this is where he goes to find backs. And so it's probably not an accident that he's getting a guy who knows Texas as well as Jones does. Yeah, look, it is an impressive haul when you talk about the schools he's been at and the number of guys he's put into the NFL in a very short period of time. Maybe that's development. I suspect it is. Maybe it's also somebody who recognizes talent in a way that not everybody does. I don't know. Either way, it's a nice selling point to backs who are interested in playing at USC. look, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what kind of recruiter a guy is coming from a. I don't mean to say anything bad about TCU, but coming from a lesser program, right? Recruiting at USC is different than recruiting at TCU. And so I don't know whether he's a guy who's going to go out and recruit 5-star backs, but he's clearly a guy who knows how to coach guys up. And really, when it comes to running back coach, I'm probably more interested in the recruiting than I am in the development. Doesn't mean you don't have to develop running backs, you do. But you can find running backs who can come in on day one and play well, because running back's not that complicated a position. It's not like offensive line. It's not like quarterback. And so I'm going to assume that this is somebody who Lincoln Riley thinks has very good connections in the high schools in Texas, and can help continue to keep that pipeline going. And for what it's worth, people associated with TCU and the fans at TCU seem to be unhappy about it. And that's usually a good sign, right? When you steal away Alex Grinch and people respond the way USC fans do, that probably makes Wisconsin fans a little bit nervous. You were not seeing a lot of people associated with TCU saying, "I'm glad we got rid of that guy." That's not their response. So I think it's probably a good hire, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Okay, we've been talking a little bit about the NFL and the people that Jones has put in the NFL. Let's move to the second quarter and talk about the NFL Combine. USC has 8 participants in the Combine. Let's start with McKinney. Eric, what caught your eye when it came to the Combine this week? Who helped themselves the most, and what else stands out to you?
So I don't want to talk about Caleb Williams because he didn't really do anything, but he does catch your eye because it's 80% of what people want to talk about at the Combine. I think he shows up to stuff knowing he's going to be the most hated guy in the room, right? And I think he handles himself pretty well, and I think he earned quite a few fans with kind of his answers and what he participated in, how he did that. Now, on the field stuff, the two things that stand out, Marshawn Lloyd's 40 stands out as one of the fastest we've seen kind of from any USC player, especially a guy who looks like that and plays that position in a while. And then I thought Jarrett Kingston really did well. He performed at the Combine like the guy I think we all thought was coming down from Washington State to be a real impact player along that offensive line. He had a good number on the bench press. He had some good agility stuff. I think maybe he locked himself in to getting drafted instead of that kind of 7th undrafted range. But those were the two things that stood out, and the rest of it, I mean, I know you love when I run over all your guys' stuff and talk about everybody, but what really stands out is that USC just doesn't, right? Xavier Worthy is not coming out of USC. Those guys, those eye-popping numbers that some of these guys put up year over year after year, those guys are not coming out of USC. And where the USC numbers typically fall, mid-range, guys who are just kind of there, put up some numbers, and then that's it. And they're not generating that buzz of, oh my gosh, this guy destroyed the Combine. He's on the freaks list. All of that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's a number here or there that I'm forgetting over the past few years, but it feels like this. It feels like this every year where, yeah, USC sends a bunch of guys, they do some stuff, they get their numbers, and then they come back and that's it. There's not a ton of buzz about them.
Sorry about that. I was trying to look up something from the Combine because I wanted to support what I was going to say, but instead I'm going to have to say something completely unsupported, like usual. Yeah, look, there's no question that Marshawn Lloyd helped himself. And it wasn't just the 40 time, although that's the number that really jumped off the screen, but his strength numbers were solid, his agility numbers were solid, and that guy's a really good football player. I mean, if you watched him, if the scouts watched him play at USC this past year, that is a guy who is strong and fast and can make plays. I suspect he's going to be just fine. I don't know what that means. I mean, this is a league that's devalued the running back so much that you can be the second, third, fourth best running back in the draft and still go on the third day. So we'll see what happens. Caleb Williams he acts like a guy who knows he's going to go number 1 overall. I don't know that he said that, but that's certainly the impression that he gives. And look, let's be honest. It would be surprising if Chicago did anything else, right? I mean, you get a few extra years of a rookie contract with a guy who's probably not going to be worse than the guy you already have, and maybe substantially better. And who wants to be the guy that passes on the next Patrick Mahomes, which he might become? We don't know that, but he might. And if he turns into the next Patrick Mahomes and you kept the quarterback you had and picked up a couple of first round draft choices that weren't NFL Hall of Fame quarterbacks, then you get fired. So he's probably gonna be all right. Look, I agree with Eric though. I mean, when you look at the USC has some good players at that combine. They have Caleb Williams, who's extraordinary, and then they have some good guys who will probably make a roster. This still doesn't look like what USC is supposed to look like when it comes to the NFL draft, right? It just doesn't. You don't have elite guys at many positions, and you go through and look at the top 10 list at various positions. You just don't see many USC guys on it. I mean, once again, USC has to improve the quality of its roster if it wants to get where it's supposed to get. And the programs that have been winning more than USC has been winning as of late also tend to send out a bunch of freaks who get drafted in the first or second round, which USC is not doing yet. And so, that's the thing that caught my eye again, is that USC has a number 1 overall pick and then a bunch of guys. And some of those guys are good football players. Some of them will make a roster, but you're not looking at multiple first round picks, and USC needs to get there. And in order to get there, they're going to have to do some recruiting, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, halftime. We have an audience.
Hey, Mark got skipped on the draft.
We're gonna let it slide, Eric. We're gonna.
I also agree. I don't need to hear what Mark has to say about this, but I feel like maybe somebody out there.
I'll be honest.
We're gonna let it slide.
Mark's got a friend that wants to hear him.
I'm going to be honest. My phone just blows up with requests not to let Mark speak in the second quarter. They're okay with the other stuff. No, Mark, I want to hear what you have to say about the combine. Because we made a giant to-do about this, I know people are expecting something really impressive and interesting. Fire away.
I forgot what I was going to say. Let's move on.
Oh, come on. Just say something.
I was going to take a different approach to this. I know we want to focus on the USC players. And unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but Caleb wasn't going to perform. I thought Taj and Brendan Rice accorded themselves very well, and especially when you consider, and I'm going to get a little snarky here, and that's why you like me on the show. USC is considered wide receiver university, and Taj and Brendan are going to add to that lineage. And I think back to this past recruiting class and how a specific recruit said, he wanted to go to a different school because of the way they develop wide receivers. And then I look at that wide receiver from that particular school running the gauntlet, and he looks like he's trying to pass a field sobriety test. I mean, he could not stay on that white line if his life depended on it. So it's, we talk about how USC doesn't have players representing. Let's appreciate the players that are there and how successful they could possibly be at the next level. Eric mentioned, no freaks that are showing up for USC. I think you should apologize to Andrew Voorhees right now. I mean, last year wasn't that long ago that he put up some freaky bench rep numbers with one leg, by the way. In
fairness to Eric, we were talking about this year's combine, but if you want to hit past combines, Mark, we can jump right on that.
I could have sworn we were talking about what USC has not been able to produce in recent combines, recent NFL drafts.
Yeah.
If I'm splitting that hair, I apologize.
No. Look, you're right about both wide receivers. I think both of those guys are going to make an NFL roster and be productive NFL players. And really, Taj Washington, I think, is one of the great success stories of the last 5 years of USC football. He came in as a transfer, and the first year he was on the roster, I was trying to figure out why they brought him on. It didn't. I didn't see anything from him that led me to believe that he was a guy that USC couldn't just pull out of the high school ranks anytime they wanted. But that's a guy who clearly worked very hard on his craft to become a very good route runner and a very dependable option. And he's not very big. And because he's not very big, that's going to limit what he can do in the NFL. But I'm willing to bet that's a guy who makes a roster and makes some plays on Sundays for the next few years.
And I wanted to get your guys' opinions on what Daniel Jeremiah said about Kalen Bullock and how there's some NFL teams who are kind of echoing what I've said. I think Kalen's best spot at the next level is going to be at cornerback. And apparently there's some NFL teams that want to look at him there. Chris, you're a DB. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. He seems like he has some ability there. He's long, he's fast. I don't know that he has great speed for a corner, but he has adequate speed for a corner. And the truth is, if you're worried about tackling, and Kalen has given you reason to be worried about tackling, that's probably the right position to put him, right? But he's an athletic enough guy and enough of a ball hawk that he's a guy that can help an NFL team. He is, and I don't know if he's going to be a starter. I don't know if he's going to be a guy who you're going to put at safety and count on making the plays that you have to make to avoid giving up big plays, because that hasn't been his history. Right. But he is a guy who will track the ball in the air and make a play on it. And the NFL is a passing league, so who knows? He may have a better career than I'd anticipate. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Mark? I mean, I cut you off and I didn't mean to. It was wrong, but
I got my big boy pants on. We're good. Let's keep going.
All right. Well, when we get to one of the later segments, I'm going to let you talk twice instead of just once, okay? All right, halftime. We have a question from Trojan Forever, a premium WeAreSC member and a big fan of this show. Actually, I'm making up that part. I don't know if he's a big fan of this show. He may hate it. But he did ask this question, and I'm going to repeat it. Here we go. With the all-star group of defensive coaches we have assembled, is there a risk that the whole is less than the sum of the parts? That is, will the coaches who are unfamiliar with each other be able to work as a smooth team? Lynn certainly sounds good, but many of the other coaches have more experience or higher level experience and may wish to have a strong influence on the overall defense. All right, there's Trojan Forever's question. He wants to know how this staff is going to work together, especially when you have so many guys with a lot of experience, maybe even more experience than Denton Lynn has. What do we think about that? Mark, because I still feel guilty, why don't you start us off?
Look, that's been my underlying question too. And, I've talked about it. I've written about it. But when you listen to what the coaches have said, Matt Entz, he's stepping down from being a head coach so he could take a couple steps forward as a head coach down the line. He is subjugating himself because he's told, hey, you need more experience at the FBS level before you're going to get a head coaching job. So when you've got guys coming in with that type of mentality, I think that works with Coach Lynn's what Coach Lynn wants to do, and it alleviates any concern there. Eric Henderson, he knows what his role is coming into USC. And I think Doug Belk he should be using USC as a stepping stone to becoming a defensive coordinator somewhere. So as long as Anthony Lynn allows everybody in that room to have a say, and they said it at the introductory press conference, they don't care whose solution works the best. Just find the best solution and let's get it out there. And as long as they maintain that philosophy and it works, there shouldn't be any issue. But I get the question.
Eric, what do you think?
Do I think that there's a chance that something that all USC fans are excited about could not work out well? Yes, right? Isn't that what we've been trained to believe over the last decade or so? So the idea that this is just, this is absolutely going to work, no question about it. No, you can't say that. But at this point, what we can go on, like what Mark talked about, was what they've said and their attitude and what you hear from people who have worked with them or played from them. And I think if the concern throughout this whole defensive staff is, I think first and foremost, that Dan Lynn does not have a track record of doing this. When Lincoln Riley talked about what they look for in good developers, and what becomes a good developer as a coach in their mind was a track record of success in doing that. Dan Lin has been a coordinator for 1 year. So you can't say, oh, but he's done this and this, and this has worked at these places. That being said, he's about as far from a 1 year defensive mind as you can get in terms of what he's grown up with, what he's done in the NFL, and how he's respected by people who talk to him and about him. So I think that's where he brings kind of a gravitas that you wouldn't expect from a guy that young with that little experience. And from what the other coaches have said, they absolutely respect him and his knowledge and his understanding and the way he works, to the point where you're not all that worried about a Matt Hens getting in there and going, no, 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 that's not going to work. We're not going to do this. Like they all clearly have an understanding of, and Dan Lin, he said, like, I'm not going to get in there and just blow everybody out of the water and say we're doing this. They all talked about, again, as Mark said, we've got to find the best way to do this. If that's your idea plus this idea, if that's just my idea, if that's whatever we sort of agree on as a way forward, with, again, Lin being kind of the key voice that comes in at the end and says, yes, this is how we're doing it. That's the way they're going to go. Is it absolutely foolproof where it's already worked and we can say, yep, that's great? No. But at this point in the process, I don't have a whole lot of concerns about, oh, they're going to shout over each other and they're not going to be able to find, common ground on some of this stuff. They all seem to have a pretty good understanding of what they want to do, how they want to do it. And I don't think they're set yet. They could get into spring ball and go, all right, we don't have any of that stuff that we thought we did. We got to figure this whole thing out again. But I think they're all smart enough and they're all kind of secure enough in what they do well to find the right answer for the team, for the defense going forward.
Yeah, look, these other assistant coaches all came in eyes wide open. They knew that they were coming to work for a guy who had 1 year as a college defensive coordinator, and they were all okay with it. So I don't think that's something that any of these guys do if they think there's a likelihood that they're going to be pushed in the corner, not listened to. Matt Ince, when he leaves a head coaching job to come be a position coach under Dan Lin, he understands what his position is, and I suspect that he felt comfortable that he will at least be listened to, even if not always agreed with. And I've been in a similar position professionally where you're used to calling all the shots and then you're working on someone else's team. And I think what you expect as a professional in that situation is that you'll be listened to and respected, and not that you'll always get your way. You understand you're not always going to get your way. The other thing is, when you listen to Lin talk, the thing that really jumps out about him is his humility. This is a guy who's talked over and over again about how much he learned last year about how to coach college players, how much he still has to learn, how excited he is to be working with these guys that have this wealth of diverse experience. This is not a guy who's talking like he's going to be a dictator and he's going to tell Coach Henney to go over in the corner and shut up, right? That's not what he's talking about. And I suspect he knows that he is surrounded by really an extraordinary group of coaches, and he would have to be a fool not to listen to those guys. I don't think Dan Lin is a fool. So I suspect it'll work out quite well. And probably be a very collaborative room where you have a lot of guys with a lot of different types of experience at different levels who are going to be adding something to the mix. So I think it's a good thing. I thought Lin was a good hire, but I was still cautiously optimistic because he only had 1 year at the college level. But when you surround him with the guys that USC surrounded him with, you look at that group of coaches and you say, that's a group that is going to be able to scheme and develop and coach as well as any group in the country. I'm convinced of that. So I'm pretty excited about it, and I think USC fans should be. So Trojan forever. Come on, lighten up, man. Lighten up. It's going to be all right. All right. This is where I'm supposed to again encourage you to click on the like and red subscriber buttons, but you've already done it because I already asked you to. So we can skip over that part and move straight to the third quarter. Now listen, you cannot win like Pete Carroll unless you have rosters like Pete Carroll's, right? That's just the reality. And all of the teams that win big have a bunch of guys who were big time players who go on to be high NFL draft choices. That's the way it works. I would say it's fair to say that USC's fan base is still a little skittish about recruiting, still a little skeptical. USC has brought in some good players over the last 2 years. We've talked about that already. They have not brought in Georgia type classes. And if USC wants to win like Georgia, they need to start doing that. So here's the deal. USC has a shiny new defensive staff. The word is that USC's NIL is, for the first time ever, funded in a way that's going to make USC competitive in that realm. That has not been the case before this year. We're told that it is the case this year. That takes care of the two major reasons most people have given for USC's inability to land the five-star recruits that Pete Carroll and, frankly, Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian were able to land when they were around, right? So here's the question, guys. When will we know whether USC recruiting is back? Obviously, by the time we get to the signing class, we'll know, but is there a way for us to know earlier? What should we be looking for if we're nervous Nelly types and we don't know whether recruiting is back where it's supposed to be or not? Eric McKinney, you're a recruiting guru. At least you're supposed to be. That's what I told everybody at the beginning of this show. So
you also told everyone that they could just join the site for free, though. So I would throw everything out at this point.
And I said you were a former member of Menudo. I lie all the time on this program.
That's true.
So I probably lied again. Prove me not to be a liar on this one instance. Give us some guru-like talk.
So it's recruiting for me is a little bit interesting right now because I think the transfer portal changes a little bit, right? Like you have to weigh things a little bit differently in terms of, okay, this group, like this year, right? You can go back and look at the 2020 class or the 2021 class and say, oh, teams that ranked in the top 5 or whatever should have great teams this year because they signed a bunch of 5-star guys 4 years ago or 3 years ago. Now they're elite guys and you look at them and they're all over the country because they all left. So it's going to be interesting as we get more numbers with all these huge transfer numbers. Like, where do the successful teams really come from? Are they landing like transfers after a year? Are they landing just 1-year transfers? Is it still recruiting 3-4 years ago that leads to these good teams? So I think there's a little bit of difference in that in terms of direct recruiting to success. But you're right in that the overall thing is, if you give me 25 5-star guys and I give you 25 3-star guys, my team's going to be better. I mean, that's just over the years, that's how it's going to play out. So I think when you start to know is when you can start locking up the elite local in-state guys pretty early. Like you look at the 25 class right now, LSU has 2 of the top 3 guys committed. Ohio State has 2 of the top 6 guys committed, and they're not all local, but it's that buy-in from elite guys that I know what I'm getting when I go to that program. I'm good going early. And USC did that with Julian Lewis, and it's going to be a whole thing of keeping him in just because of the distance, because of the position, because of the schools that are chasing him. That's going to be interesting. But when you look at California, top 10 guys in the 25 class, and it's not always this way. Sometimes people say, oh, 7 of the top 10 California guys went to all these schools, and you look at it and it's like, well, 6 of them were quarterbacks, and USC wasn't going to take 6 quarterbacks, and USC didn't want the other couple guys. So that can happen. But if you look at this 25 class in the top 10, I mean, there's like 6 no-brainer guys that USC wants and probably needs. So in this class, you'd know if USC's back, if those guys can jump in a little bit early. And California guys haven't always done that. So maybe that's a high bar to hold USC to. But yeah, when you know that USC is back when it comes to recruiting, it's that those guys they see no other option. They're going to USC, and that's kind of the end of it. And then when you go out and get guys nationally, it's not all kind of the 3-4. And you've seen that a little bit. I mean, Cameron Fountain was a guy that those guys wanted. Braylon Shelby was a guy that Texas schools wanted. So those are guys where you're seeing it kind of trickle a little bit. More of those, but I think for me it's the in-state stuff. You still have guys in-state, elite guys that are just I'm gonna see what else is out there before I sort of settle on USC. And USC, again, you can recruit nationally and not only California, but boy, it makes it a lot easier if you're getting the elite California guys locked in early.
Hey, Colkin, you want to talk on this one?
Yeah, I have a couple of words, so I'll keep it
All
short.
right, so out guru the guru. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you asked the question, when is USC going to be back? Obviously, is it wins and trophies, or is it going to be that mythical recruiting championship that Oregon chases every year? You talk about, you have to be able to recruit like Pete Carroll. I think it's really interesting. I think maybe on a future show we can talk about it. But the mystique of Pete Carroll's recruiting, how well would he have done? And I'm not saying he wouldn't have been successful, but how well would he have done in the era of NIL and the transfer portal? It's a lot easier to keep your guys at home locally, like what Eric's referring to, when you're winning and you're bringing home the trophies every year. So that's, I guess, if we're trying to gauge when is USC recruiting back, that's really how we have to look at it. So what is going to be the acceptable level? Top 5, top 10 classes. What is the standard for USC? I think we all agree it's got at a minimum top 10, right? But I always come back to this. Who's recruiting you, and which programs are you battling for that recruit? That lets me know if you're going to have a good recruiting class. Are you going to get 25 5-stars in a class? No. Is Georgia? No. But I think Eric was referring to was cumulatively, you want to start stacking the elite guys on top of elite guys. USC will start doing that when they start winning again. That was Pete Carroll's greatest influence on recruiting. They were winning. And the guys at home wanted to stay home and keep contributing to that winning dynasty that Pete had built. I'm done.
Yeah. So I think that there are a couple of things we should be looking for. One is I want to see how many of these elite guys are visiting USC and visiting multiple times. You're not going to land those guys all the time, right? If you're trying to pull guys out of the deep South who are 5-star recruits, high 4-star recruits, they're being recruited by everybody. They're being offered money by everybody. If those guys are making multiple trips out, including sometimes on their own dime, that's a good sign. You're not going to get all those guys. Pete didn't get all those guys. Nick Saban didn't get everybody he recruited either. But if you have those guys showing up, then that's a very good sign. I think you're going to see that this year, certainly with defensive line recruits. It looks like USC is going to get a long line of high-end defensive line recruits that want to visit LA. And that's what you have to have if you want to have elite defensive line recruits. And let's look, if we're going to be honest about things, if USC wants to compete for national championships, the number one thing it needs to do is bring in elite defensive line recruits. Lincoln Riley will recruit quarterbacks, and USC is not going to have a difficult time finding receivers and running backs. They're not. That's already baked into the cake. The question is, can you have a defensive line that is going to dominate your opponents? And so that's what I want to see. How many of these elite national level defensive line recruits are showing up over the summer? How many are doing it on their dime? How many are showing up multiple times? If you have that going on, and I think you will, you have a chance to land a big time defensive line class. And that's probably the most important thing they could do. I do agree with Eric that you need to lock down California. It's not enough to recruit just California anymore, but you have to be able to lock down the elite guys here. And the problem is that USC has been mediocre for long enough, not only on the scoreboard, but in terms of projecting how much they care about successful football, they've been projecting that they're okay with mediocrity for so long before Lincoln Riley was hired. That really changed the culture of Southern California recruiting. In Pete Carroll days, pulling a guy out of Southern California, which would happen occasionally, was a rare event. So much so that people like Urban Meyer talked about how, yeah, we decided we weren't going to spend much time going there because we knew what was going to happen. That has changed, and high school coaches in Southern California were sending their guys all over the country because they could not count on USC to coach them up. And that may take a few years to change. I think, though, that when you start to hire defensive staffs like USC has hired, when you already have the reputation as an offensive coach that Lincoln Riley has, you give a lot of guys a reason to stay home. If you back that up by being able to offer checks that are at least close to what other people are offering in other parts of the country, that's going to make it a lot easier too. So I actually expect that USC will have a much better recruiting class this year, assuming the performance on the field is reasonable. If they fall apart on the field, all bets are off. But if they play relatively well on the field, I think you're going to start to see USC climb back up into the top 10, maybe even the top 5 in recruiting. But we'll see this summer. Let's figure out what guys are showing up, and that will tell you which guys they actually have a legitimate chance to sign. Okay, this is where if we were at the Coliseum on a game day, Traveler would come out, they would light the torch, we would do all that stuff. I'm not going to light the torch. And I've had some complaints about that. I've heard the complaints. They like Katz's torch, and when Katz comes back, the torch will come back. But until he does, I'm going to reserve it out of respect for Greg and out of my distaste for the whole torch thing. So we're not doing that. But it is a magical thing especially in a big game at night when they light the torch. That's a pretty good deal. So if you like that, then just remember what it was like last time you were at the Coliseum and pretend that we're doing that now. We're going to move on to the fourth quarter. We're going to play, once again, the Arbitrary Unfair Arledge Quiz Show. Now listen, we've also had some viewer complaints about the way I've been operating this game show. One complaint was that I didn't make Culkin lose. That's not fair. I'm not going to take that advice. Culkin does plenty all by himself to encourage a loss. I'm not going to put my thumb on the scales, okay? But others complained that I wasn't nice enough to you guys, that I should have been more fair. And so in at least one important respect, the people have spoken, fellas. They've made clear what they want. And I reject their verdict. I'm going to be even more unfair and even more arbitrary this week than I was in past weeks, okay? Your answers will be weighed and judged. The winner, again, will receive a week's worth of pride and honor. The loser, once again, will stay just as he is right now. No pride and very little honor. Are we ready to play, guys? All right. Here we go. Question number 1. If you could attend one non-USC college football game in the 2024 season, which one would you pick? Eric McKinney.
All right, so I was going to say the national championship game, but then you would jump on me that I'm guaranteeing USC's not in there. So obviously I'm pulling that back and we're not doing that. So regular season game, Georgia goes to Texas, but so that's the regular season game. The game that I want to go to would be the first round, right? That home playoff game. And I want to see who gets it, right? Maybe the 5 seed, 6 seed, something like that. But I think that is going to that'll be something to see a home playoff game there.
So that's Georgia at Texas and a home playoff.
Georgia at Texas is my regular season one. If a school like, right, Georgia, a Michigan, a Penn State, I know I can't pick a USC, but something where the home crowd is well regarded, the playoff game atmosphere at a legit home crowd stadium, I think just the newness and all of that would be fantastic.
All right, Mark Culkin, what's your answer?
So if I can get the USC Utah State game flip-flop from the 7th and the 14th, I would be able to go visit Texas visiting Ann Arbor on September 7th, because USC plays in Ann Arbor 2 weeks later. And look, if we're going to be in Rome, I might as well start cheating early, getting some signals down and passing those on to USC. So it's the Michigan
I hear
versus.
that happens at Ann Arbor occasionally.
It does. So
It happens in other stadiums,
Yeah.
mostly, I think.
that would be the game. I need to scout out what Michigan's going to look like for USC. And it's a hard.
So, Chris, I'm not going to go over you or anything, but I'm going to slide in the middle. Michigan's got Texas, USC, and Oregon all coming to Ann Arbor this year. That is a home schedule.
Michigan doesn't leave the state of Michigan until I think October.
Maybe the greatest home schedule of all time. I don't know, but that's that. I mean, a season ticket for a Michigan fan this year is a great thing to have. Look, Michigan Ohio State is always a game that I would like to see. Or since we're sticking on with, if we stick with Ohio State for a second, Ohio State has Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall on their non-conference schedule. And let me just say,
is that the ACC Coastal? Is that division?
I don't know. I'm not sure what conferences those teams play in. And let me just say, Buckeye fans, if any of you are listening to this show, really courageous non-conference scheduling. I mean, USC has LSU and Notre Dame, and Michigan has Texas on their schedule, and you guys are playing Marshall, Western Michigan, and Akron. Fantastic. You're going to earn that playoff berth this year the way you usually earn your playoff berth, by playing nobody and then losing to Michigan at the end of the year, but maybe sneaking in. I'm going to go with Eric McKinney in this first round, even though he cheated and offered multiple answers, but I'm with him. Seeing one of those home playoff games in the first year of the 12-game, the 12-team playoff would be pretty fantastic. And so we're going to go Eric McKinney 1, Mark Culkin still 0. All right.
Fantasy land again. Got it.
Okay. What I mean, are you complaining already? You have 0 points. Are you trying?
It wouldn't be me if I'm not complaining.
Are you trying to go in negative numbers before question number 2, Mark? Come on, get your act together. Listen, people complain that I'm not nice to you, but this is why I'm not nice to you. It's stuff like that.
Let's just get to the inevitable. Let's just get there sooner.
All right, fine. Number 2, give me the USC player that could and should have been a superstar, but the stars just weren't in alignment for some reason. Mark Holcomb.
I'm going to pull back a name, DJ Morgan. Had he not gotten injured, this guy was an elite athlete. Played running back, Taft High School. Probably could have qualified for the Olympics if he wanted to focus on track and field as a hurdler. That's how good he was. Tore up his knee, and whatever career he could have had, it never materialized. I think he ended up transferring out of USC eventually, but yeah, DJ Morgan, what could have been.
All right. I didn't expect that answer. Interesting and good answer. Eric McKinney, what do you got?
I'm gonna one up myself here. I've got I've got 10 names that I threw down as part of this answer. So I'm not gonna give them all, but the first thing I came up with, which is not my answer, which again I know you love.
What are we doing? I asked you for an answer, and you're giving an answer and telling me it's not your answer. Then what
all right, the answer is Herschel Dennis, right? Signed in 2002. USC then the next year signed 2 guys. What were their names? Reggie Bush and Lendell White to play his spot. 24 suspended early. Those guys jump him, the injuries, all of that stuff. Without those guys, again, I know Lendell White and Reggie Bush were a huge reason that USC was USC in 2003, 2004, 2005. But if Herschel Dennis is the number 1 back, I still think that team is pretty good, and he could have been the guy that drove a lot of that running game. And so for him to go from big time signee that year to watching those guys become who they became and USC do what it did without him making a huge impact, that's one of those guys that I think things just didn't work out the way certainly he would have wanted, and USC fans for him. Yeah, the one I didn't go with was the Spinal Tap drummer-esque line of tight ends from 2002 to like 2018, where you've got Christian Thomas, Junior Pomey, Jalen Cope Fitzpatrick, Bryce Dixon, Daniel Matterbaby, Kerry Angeline, all guys that signed, all guys that just poof for one reason or another. I mean, it got to the point where it was like, this is insane at this position where this keeps happening.
You actually did end up giving us 10 names after.
I didn't get to 10. There's 3 that I have written down here that I didn't mention for you.
Okay, go ahead and mention them.
Well, for injury reason, Jeff Byers is a guy that I don't think quite got to the level that maybe you thought. And then for something that had nothing to do with injury, Jody Lewis and Jack Jones, both just tremendously talented guys that got themselves in trouble and out.
All right, because you named all those guys, Mark Holken gets the point. I'm gonna go, look, because Greg isn't here, I'm gonna do something that Greg would do, and I'm gonna go back all the way to the early 70s and mention my good friend Rod McNeil. Rod was a very productive player at USC. He gained a lot of yards on that 1972 team. But if you don't realize it, Rod was supposed to be the next OJ. He was a hurdling champ. He was a really big guy who was really fast. Almost without question, the number one running back recruit in the nation the year he came out. And if not for a couple of just brutal hip injuries, probably would have been the star on those early 1970s teams. And we probably wouldn't be talking about Anthony Davis as much as we do now, although AD was obviously a great player. But I'm going to give a shout out to Rod because I like him and because he deserves it.
Look, Chris, I know you're a lawyer, so I know you understand what entrapment is. I just want to give you a heads up that I will be sending you some sort of legal notification of this.
Like a legal memo or a cease and desist? What is it?
Yeah, I'm gonna put things into motion. The fact, right, like, hey, let's hear all 10 and then immediately docking the point for saying all 10. I mean, it's again, I'm not the lawyer, but that feels textbook to me.
The rebuttal would probably be you have the right to not self-incriminate, Eric.
Well, Eric knew how that was going to play out. Okay, so our score going into question number 3 is Mark Holken 1, Eric McKinney 0, who just lost a point because of that nonsense. All right, number 3. Give me your worst USC prediction ever. Could be a game, it could be a season, whatever else you want. Your worst USC prediction ever. Eric McKinney, go ahead and start and give us 1 if you can, but if you can limit it to at least less than 8, that would be fine. Go ahead.
I had 9. So my worst prediction ever was that I was going to win one of these games in this, and obviously that's not coming true. I don't make a ton of predictions. We don't do like a lot of score stuff and whatever, so I'm not on the record for any of that stuff. But boy, did I not believe for a second, and we talk about this game probably more than we should, but that USC UCLA 2006 game, I not a chance did I think that was going to end up the way that ended up.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody thought that would. Holken, what's your worst USC prediction ever?
Yeah, I'm gonna lay myself out there, make myself a little vulnerable. I once said, and I think I was probably running a little smack at the time on the message board, but I thought Christian McCaffrey had more name than game. I thought USC had the better recruit in that class. So I'm willing to stick my neck out there and say, you know what? I was freaking wrong.
Who was USC's recruit in that class?
I don't remember.
Okay, then pretty good chance you got that one wrong then. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give mine. I alluded to this earlier because I knew this was coming up. I am one of the people that sent in a fax to Heritage Hall when Pete Carroll was hired. I was furious that hire went down. I mean, Mike Garrett had promised us a proven college winner. That's what he said. And then when none of the proven college winners wanted to come that he tried to hire, he hired this guy, a dad of some girl on campus. I was furious. Turned out I missed that one.
You still have a copy of that fax?
No, I wish I did.
too.
In fact, I sort of was waiting for if Clay Helton had a better research staff. All those years when I was ripping Clay on a weekly basis, I was waiting for Clay to pull out my facts about Pete Carroll and throw that on the WeAreSC board just to destroy my credibility. But never happened. Okay, I can't remember who's supposed to win that one. Mark, you get a point. 2-0.
Down, Eric.
I don't even have a reason why other than McKinney's already conceded the game. He said he can't win. All right, question number 4. Which is more likely to happen? Alabama's program falling back to earth or Clemson's program resurrecting back to its recent glory days under Dabo Swinney? What do you think? Mark Holken, you go first.
Yeah, until Dabo goes all in with NIL, it's Bama coming back to the pack. I know that it sounds a little contradictory, but I'm going to stick with this. My heels are dug in. Strength of schedule is going to play a significant role as we continue through this playoff surge that we're going through. In 2026, Alabama already has scheduled South Florida and Florida State. In 2027, they already got West Virginia and Ohio State. We know Texas and Oklahoma are now part of their conference. Look, 2 losses per year is going to be the new norm. So Alabama coming back to the pack, I don't think they're going to be as nearly as dominant as they were when Nick Saban was their head coach and you didn't have all this other stuff going on behind the scenes with the transfer portal and NIL, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, good answer. Eric McKinney, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, especially if Clemson stays in the ACC, right? Like that's going to be incredibly difficult for any of those programs to get back to that level. I think Clemson caught lightning in a ball. Deshaun Watson was unbelievable, and they paired it with that defense that they had all at the same time, those defensive linemen, and I don't think you're going to get that. I think Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach, a fantastic coach. It is worrisome that his belief is, I can just bring all the Washington coaches and players that I had and do what I did there at Alabama. I don't know. And I do think that you look at the recruiting rankings everywhere, talent's getting spread out all over the place. I don't know if we've got that Alabama run and even Georgia when things start to pull back a little bit for them. I think we're going to see much more parity in terms of not every college team, but that top, 20, 30 teams, I think will bob up and down a little bit more. So definitely Alabama coming back. And look, I don't expect Mark to lose a point for this or me to gain one, but going back to that last one, McCaffrey was a 2014 recruit and USC did not sign a running back in that 14 class. So the idea that Mark thought nobody was a better recruit than Christian McCaffrey.
Wait a minute. No,
that feels out there. That feels out there to me. Look, I'm not the judge.
Yeah, that's bad.
I'm not the judge, but it feels out there.
I don't think I said that, but if we ever wants to put words in my mouth, that's okay. If he needs a point that desperately.
If you could choose Christian McCaffrey or just an empty seat in the running back room, and Culkin says, yeah, give me nobody. Okay, you're right. I'm going to take away a point from Mark Culkin for that.
I put my neck out there. I was vulnerable. Eric came up with some wishy-washy answer, and you're going to give him a point?
When you said you were going to make yourself vulnerable, I thought you were going to start crying about something. That's what I expected. I thought there'd be real emotional. All right. Look, you're both right on this question. Clemson's a really strange case, right? Because Clemson has had some good football teams in the past, but it's never been a blue blood program. And then for a period of 4, 5, 6 years, it was absolutely dominant. And it's hard to imagine them getting that back. Certainly, if you don't believe in the transfer portal and you don't have NIL, it's going to be hard to get back there. I don't expect that Alabama will fall off a cliff. I do think that expecting Kalen DeBoer to continue to run a program at the same level that Nick Saban did is asking too much. If you're saying that he's going to be equivalent to the greatest that ever coached in college football, you're probably expecting more than he can deliver. They're still going to be good. There's a reason why Alabama's had a lot of successful teams with a lot of different coaches. there's probably a reason why the two most successful college football coaches of all time were both Alabama coaches. That's a place where you're able to win. And so Kalen DeBoer will win, but it's hard to imagine Alabama staying at the same level that they've been at. I think they're probably going to drop back to earth at least a little bit. And, you know, in college football history, there are very few examples of an all-time great following an all-time great. You can make an argument for Tom Osborne following Devaney at Nebraska. Even then, though, Tom Osborne took a couple decades to win a national title. So I don't know, but I think both of you get 1 point for that. But Mark lost a point because Eric did some solid research. So our score right now is 2-2. All right, number 5, and I know Mark is going to hate this question, and you still have to answer it. Number 5, you are in charge of designing alternative uniforms for USC for the USC LSU game. What do they look like? Mark, go ahead and start us off.
So there was still some vagueness in that question, so I'm going to take that latitude and use it. USC is wearing their 2003-2004 crescent shoulder uniform. They're going to wear their home uni, Cardinal jerseys, yellow pants, gold pants. Nick Saban's 2003 team is going to wear their home uni that had that what was it? 3 stripes on it, the gold, purple on their shoulder, and then USC and LSU wear their helmets. I like the old LSU helmet that had the block letters with the little tiger head underneath it. That's theirs. USC, you wear their uniform from 2003. It was a split national championship. Go settle it on the field.
All right. Eric McKinney, what is your alternative uniform going to look like?
Look, I'm really frustrated by this because it's the same sort of idea. I went back to the exact 1979 uniforms that these two played when USC beat LSU. I agree. The little tiger head on the LSU one with that, and then the 79 USC uniforms. Now you said, so that's what I could stomach seeing in terms of an alternate USC LSU. You said alternate, not throwback.
Yep.
So I like the idea of LSU. Let's go like all brown plus the helmet and a stick sticking up out of the helmet, and the full corn dog look for the uniforms.
Like a
LSU.
dangerous projectile that can impale.
It comes up, right? If you're on the field, you got to take it off. But standing on the sideline, you got to go full corn dog uniform outfit. Yes.
Right. So look, here's the thing. That was a ridiculous answer. I mean, and I like ridiculous answers. You guys know that, but it was unsafe. Neither one of you gave an alternative uniform. You gave old uniforms. My first ever USC game in person was 1984 USC LSU, and so bringing back those uniforms, I'd be okay with. If we're really going to go with alternative uniforms, and I know nobody on this panel wants that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. Oftentimes we talk about black uniforms and other things. I don't like that. If we had to do an alternative, I could live with Cardinal pants with the Cardinal jerseys. I could live with that. It's not what I want, but I could live with that. It doesn't seem to completely destroy tradition the way all black unis would. Mark, you were trying to add something. Go ahead.
I was just, you kind of made USC look like Minnesota with that combination, but whatever.
You could go all Cardinal for SC and all the yellow or gold or whatever their official color is for LSU and go that way.
You could go that way.
I didn't know if you were going to lean into Vegas at all with it as like a one-off.
Like showgirl uniforms or something?
Again, apparently we can't have the feathers out of the helmet because we can't put anything out of the helmet.
So you do the holographic type of uniform where depending on how the light hits you, the uniform kind of reflects different colors.
Or, SC wears Cardinal and there's like hearts and diamonds on it, and you've got like spades and clubs on it. Yeah,
If you could glue feathers to a helmet, Oregon would have done it long ago. So I'm assuming that's against the rules. Okay, I'm not going to give anybody a point because you guys both gave throwback uniforms instead of alternatives. And I actually wanted you to go on record with alternatives because I know you both hate the idea, as I do too. And I wanted to force you to do it. You chose not to. You didn't play the game. You don't get a point. Number 6.
No black uniforms.
Look, yes. And if we're changing the color scheme, don't go gold jerseys. That would be horrible. I mean, gold pants, gold jerseys, that would be terrible. I don't want to see that. I get it looks a little bit Minnesota-like, but I could handle the Cardinal on Cardinal if you had to. All right,
Agreed.
question number 6, and this is obviously very important and relevant to USC football, but how is Nicolas Cage a famous actor? Can somebody please explain how that happened? Eric McKinney, go.
Yeah, so this question lends itself pretty well. And again, I did more research on this question than anything else. I want to make that very clear. It lends itself really well to the Wikipedia nepotism game, where you look at their life and family and you count the blue hyperlinks in their family. Nicolas Cage is in double digits for that, and that, I mean, that's the answer. I will say, Adaptation is one of my favorite movies and a phenomenal movie, and he's been in some good stuff. But at the heart of your question, it's the hyperlink early life and family section in their Wikipedia page.
Okay, solid answer. Mark Culkin, you got a better one?
Yeah, and it's just one name. It's Francis Ford Coppola. And I think that's his uncle. So when you have that kind of bloodline running around Hollywood, you might have a part or two in a movie here or there. And let's be honest, Valley Girl is cinematographic artistry. One of the greatest 80s movies ever released. And if you like the movie, you had to like the soundtrack.
Look, here's the thing. I'm with both of you guys that Nicolas Cage has actually made some good movies. I wonder how much better those movies would be if you had a competent actor in it. I just don't get it. It's so he makes Keanu Reeves look like Anthony Hopkins. I mean, he is so bad. I don't even know what to do. You could take Nicolas Cage out and substitute Bobcat Goldthwait in any of those movies, and the movies are better. That's what I think about Nick Cage. I just don't understand it.
There's a Community episode about this exact thing, and the character who goes through it is sort of having the same absolute breakdown that you are and trying to figure out good or bad and why is he.
I tried to watch Community, and I could only get in a few episodes. I mean, and I'm a Chevy Chase fan, but maybe not this Chevy Chase. Maybe it's the 1980s version. All right, Eric McKinney.
I'm trying to picture Bobcat Goldthwait and Sean Connery and The Rock together.
It'd be amazing.
Somehow those two don't play off of each other very well.
It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing. I'm telling you, that's an Oscar-winning film if you do that. Eric McKinney says that he did a bunch of research, more research on this ridiculous question than any other. He gets a point. He's up 3-2. Question number 7. Greatest performance by a USC player in a losing effort. Eric McKinney, go.
Again, it's a game I talk about whenever we have to talk about USC losing. It's Marquise Lee against Arizona in 2012. 16 catches for 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. We almost didn't get to talk about it because he almost caught that nuts one at the end that would have given him 3 touchdowns and 400 yards. When you think about 345 yards receiving, that's over 2-3 games, and that's pretty good. It's ridiculous to think about that in one game. And look, Lane Kiffin did that masterfully. I bet we could come up with 5 of these from games that he lost. Alan Bradford against Washington ran for 200-something yards and they lost it. He found ways to do it here.
Yeah, found a way to get it done. Mark Culkin, what do you think?
Yeah, because I knew that was going to be Eric's answer. I had to have a backup. Let's see if you can name the player. 29 completions, 40 pass attempts, 365 yards. And it happened in a bowl game. Anyone? Bueller?
Well, did you give touchdowns and interceptions?
Against Texas in the Rose Bowl.
Very good. Chris, you get a point.
Thank you. Good. I'm excited about that. I'm still behind, but I have a point. The other one you could have given, Eric's was the right answer. That was an unbelievable performance. And because he got to go first, he got to give the answer. But RJ Soward as a true freshman against UCLA, 6 catches, 260 yards. and he was just unbelievably explosive in that game. One of the worst USC UCLA games of all time, and there have been a bunch of. I've seen a lot of bad USC UCLA games. That was up there with it, but Soward went absolutely nuts. And if you watch that game, you would have left assuming that R.J. Soward was going to go down as one of the great USC players of all time before his career was over. He didn't, obviously. He wasted a lot of that talent, but it was an extraordinary amount of talent. Okay, so I got the point. So I guess it's still 3-2, Eric McKinney. By the way, thank you, Mark, for that. I needed a point to make me feel better about myself. Number 8, best active stand-up comic. Mark Holken, go.
You know, I'm one of those, I like raunchy, bad humor that offends everybody.
I think nobody's surprised by that. Go ahead. Right? Who is it?
Look, if I had to go with somebody, you said current.
Yep.
Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle. Maybe the GOAT. Eric McKinney, what do you got?
Nate Bargatze. The Tennessee Kid came out 5 years ago. It's like a top 5 stand-up all time for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give the point to Eric because I also had Bargatze on there. Chappelle is unbelievable, but Chappelle these days he's almost more of a commentator and storyteller with depth than he is just a stand-up comedian. 15, 20 years ago, that was different. He's amazing, but you're right. Tennessee Kid was incredible. So I'm going to give the point to Eric. Eric's now up 4-2 with only 2 questions remaining. That means I
have 15 answers for these 2 questions.
Yeah, well, don't do that. You'll lose one of your points. Right now, all you can do is tie if you just shut up. All right, number 9. Is UCLA soft because they wear baby blue, or do they wear baby blue because they're soft? Give me an answer and some support. Mark Holken, start us off.
They're soft because they wear baby blue, and it's self-inflicted. And I come from, look, why does Iowa paint their opponents' locker rooms pink? Plays with the mind. UCLA players are soft because they're constantly looking at a soft color.
Okay, so who's playing with are they playing with their own minds then? Is that what they're doing?
They got to wear their uniforms.
I mean, I know you wanted to bring Iowa into this. You're very pro Kirk Ferentz these days.
Yes, very.
And go ahead and answer your own question. You asked everybody whether Kirk Ferentz was going to be doing the introduction for Lincoln Riley at the Big Ten.
Is that a coincidence that they are? Is that a coincidence that they're going to be on the same day, Big 12 or Big Ten Media Day?
I don't know, but I am curious to see whether Kirk Ferentz is going to run his mouth at Media Day with Lincoln Riley there, or if that's the thing he only does when they're separated by 1,800 miles. I'll be curious.
I hope they go right after each other, one after one.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just impressed that he can be offensive at all, right? In any regard.
You're right. I mean, it's a program that's known only for being extraordinarily boring, right? I mean, and it's not that they haven't had some good teams. They obviously have. But it's one of those things where if I'm scrolling through trying to see who's on and I see that it's an Iowa game, like it takes real effort to push the button because I know that I'm just going to watch 3 running plays and a punt over and over and over and over again. And somehow Ferentz thinks that's something he should brag about. He thinks that he should, right? I mean, look what I did. I gave my kid a job. We had 300 yards offense in September. I mean, it's just horrific to watch them. Whatever. I mean, last time they played USC, I guess Ferentz got his revenge for the Orange Bowl. But I don't think Kirk is going to hold USC's offense to 12 points. I mean, that's the sort of thing he can do against Northwestern. I don't think it's going to work against USC, or for that matter, Washington or Oregon. So we'll see what he thinks about the West Coast schools. All right. I noticed that McKinney is actually wearing blue for the 2nd week in a row, which is questionable for a USC show, but that's what he's doing. Not baby blue. It's a harder blue, a harder edge blue, a tough guy blue. That's the kind of blue that Rambo would wear. But what do you think? Is UCLA soft because they wear baby blue, or do they wear baby blue because they're soft?
Look, I thought for a second about not answering this and just coasting in for the tie on this, but because I'm not wearing baby blue, I'm going to be aggressive about this and go. So it's Ouroboros, right? It's both things working together on itself as the program just devours itself. I think is the idea. It's not chicken and egg where there is an answer, but it's in that realm. And then I'm gonna tangent off of this entirely because my favorite thing about UCLA football of all time is when they tried to go against this and tried to be tough. And it was the year they came out against USC and they put on eye black all over their faces, right? Coaches did it, players did it, just an absurd amount. And half the team spent half the first quarter wiping eye black out of their eyes because they couldn't see. I remember the video of Eddie Vanderdoes on the sideline, like trying to get all this eye black because he'd blinded himself by trying to do this. Anyway, that's my favorite UCLA memory of going against the baby blue. I don't think it was the year they went all white with like that crazy uniform, but anytime they seem to try to go against the baby blue and the softness, it finds a way to just kick them again. It's enjoyable.
I think it's worth pointing out that, yes, that wasn't very long ago that UCLA played in blackface, which is inappropriate. I think we can all agree. So, I mean, I think that UCLA football should be canceled because of that, and I look forward to the day when that happens. So, if you're looking for somebody to target, the Bruins probably deserve it after that. All right, I'm going to give a point to Mark Culkin, and the reason I'm going to give a point to Mark Culkin is not because that answer involving pink walls and Iowa was a strong answer. It was not, but it does help to increase the excitement because now we have a 4-3 game going into question number 10. All right, here it is. Last question. It's all on the line. You're in charge of planning a rivalry prank the week of the USC UCLA game. What's the prank and how do you pull it off? Eric McKinney, what do you got?
Pranks are so tough now. You just don't know how they're going to get taken, right? You can't do a prank where you take stuff or where you physically do anything to anybody. I think I like the idea of putting a story in the Times or the Daily Bruin or whatever with quotes from Martin Jarmond about how they're going to take real sports seriously and put a bunch of weight behind Rose Bowl, 18 people show up for that game, and UCLA football is still where it is. That being said, I'm going to pick apart that answer too, and I'm going to do Chris's job just a tiny bit here. I don't know how many people would care if you said that UCLA was going to throw a bunch of weight behind its football program at this point.
I mean, it might be fun at least to announce one of their home games as a sellout before Saturday and then see 18 people show up. I mean,
that was part of the idea. Just, hey, here we go. We're all in. We're all in. The national media picks it up. There's an overhead shot of the Rose Bowl 10 minutes before kickoff. And you can see the individual people, walking around trying to move down a little bit.
And maybe you can have that dream team coaching staff run them out of the locker room with, Neuheisel and Chow and Dwayne Walker. I mean, that would be amazing. All right, Culkin, what do you have?
Yeah, so I love pranks. I've been involved in quite a few. I'm getting a fleet of drones. And I'm doing the Cardinal and Gold confetti drop all over UCLA's campus, all over Westwood. And I even thought about doing a liquid confetti drop. Make them have to really do some cleanup.
What's liquid confetti?
Oh, it's just red and gold paint.
Oh, you're just gonna drop paint all over Westwood.
All over. I figured, let's just go with the regular New Year's Day or V-Day, Victory Day type of parade confetti.
Okay.
All over Westwood.
A gigantic criminal act is what that would have been. But, that's fine. It's fine. So I'll tell you, I had considered something like kidnapping UCLA's defensive coordinator and then replacing him with Alex Grinch the morning of a game. but that struck me as too cruel. I didn't want to do that to them. So instead, I thought maybe have an alligator fill moat on the other side of that wall. So, you know, they do that tradition of theirs where they jump over the wall, that's what they run into. Or maybe put a live bear inside the UCLA locker room on game day. That also might be fun. Okay. Mark Culkin, since he is advocating criminal acts live, well, I guess it's not live, this show's taped. Still, advocating criminal acts publicly, I'm going to have to give the point to Eric McKinney. Eric McKinney wins this one 5-3, and whoever it was that sent that comment about how they wanted McKinney to win and they wanted Culkin to lose, this is your week. You can revel in this for 7 days. All right, good game, fellas.
When the haters comment, I win. Just understand that.
Okay, well, you didn't though. You lost 5-3. All right, let's go on to overtime. Quit claiming you won when you lost. I don't understand that. What, you overcame expectations? What do you?
I got over on the haters. I win.
All right, you didn't. You lost. All right, overtime. Here we go. You were offered a book deal to write a book about USC football. Tell me what book you're going to write. Mark Culkin, go.
The best locker room speeches and the head coaches that gave them.
I like that. That's a good book. I'd read that. Okay. Eric McKinney, you have a book that I'd read?
I kind of just want to write that one before Mark can. That's not bad. It's not a bad answer.
It's a pretty good one, actually. I like
so in terms of the not negative, but gossipy, whatever, the 2012 season, whole thing, right? Beginning to end, all of that stuff would be, I think, pretty interesting. As far as the one USC personality, Craig Fertig, everything he did, all his stories, I got a chance to talk with him for a few times when I was covering USC, and just the stories he had, the way he told them, who he kind of coached and was connected to, and all of that. I think he'd be a fun personality to get back into and all of that. Again, I know it's hypothetical, but being able to get go back in time and get a chance to talk to him and pick his brain and write that story, I think would be a fun one.
Also a good book. So I'll tell you what I'm interested in is, obviously that 1972 USC team, maybe the greatest USC team of all time. Keith Jackson says maybe the greatest college football team of all time. USC went 6-4-1 both of the years before that. And apparently there were deep divisions on those teams. Players did not get along. Some of those divisions may have been race-based even, and there was and there's a story about how they turned that around and the team really came together before that 1972 season. Rod McNeil's talked about that on some of the interviews I've done with him, and I've heard from other players. I think there's a story there that might be interesting, that would be worth telling. And so that's probably what I would write. Or I would write all of Clay Helton's greatest locker room speeches. That would be fun too.
Leaflet.
It's part 2 to Mark Culkin's book. Okay, guys, anything else that we should tell the people? Anything else you have?
No, you cover it all.
Never have anything. Every week I ask you if you have anything to add. You never have anything to add.
What about the couple books I thought, could you do the month of Cliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator like that? So USC nearly, I mean, it didn't end up happening. And maybe this is going all the way back to whatever question that was about, the almost whatevers. They almost had Cliff Kingsbury and Dave Aranda as offensive and defensive coordinators for Clay Helton. And how would that have maybe buoyed him a little bit and kept him around? And Chris, I see your side. I see your side. I don't want to end it on that. But in terms of those what if kinds of things, that's up there a little bit.
He might still be here winning 8 games a year and talking his happy talk about how we're this close to winning it all.
Eric just gave me my 3rd what if for tomorrow's Monday Morass on Tuesday.
There you go.
Thank
okay.
you.
We're done, fellas. All right, that will do it for this Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A big thank you to our panelists, Eric McKinney, Mark Culkin, and I guess me. I'll thank myself. Thank you for watching. Have a great week. We will see you next Tuesday. In the meantime, fight on, everybody.